You're listening to Making a Living Show. I'm Robi Levy. Who are you and what do you make for a living?
Hi, I'm Kerry Francis. I'm an actress. I'm a singer, songwriter, voiceover artist, and as of last year, producer.
What do you mean as of last year you're a producer? What did you produce?
I produced a feature last year with some friends who had been involved in the crew side of a movie I did a couple years before that. And they reached out to could I do some voiceover for it? And instead of paying me, I really want to start having more producer and producing credits. And I wanted to just get my feet wet with something with people I knew. So instead of paying me, we did a credit trade for producing. And I've learned a lot since then, because once IMDb has you listed as a producer, it's like, here's 7,000 emails from people who want to pitch you things and, didn't do any research on you, So yes, but I would say, categorically, I classify myself the most as an actress and singer.
So take me all the way back. How did you get started singing and acting?
I started singing before I could speak. I was just that baby that did that. And I got into lessons. My mom is a music teacher. She's done piano lessons out of her house, since as long as I can remember. And she, with her background, was like, we're going to put you in classical training. So I actually started studying opera and very classic Italian training musically when I was 11, which I know most 11-year-olds are doing.
That's right? What they want to sing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was singing and, doing these crazy Latin exercises and
give us a sample. What is it?
No, definitely.
If you sing opera, I'll sing opera. That's all I got.
Straight on some opera. No, I do. I still do sing some opera when I just feel like it, or I'll, be singing around the house and trade out little words. But that led into, I am very much now aware, but I wasn't aware then that I was a weird little kid where I would find, whether it was casting calls in New York and beg my parents, could I go? I, would go online when I was like 11, 12 and do detective work. And I would find agents and managers and cold pitch them. It's very weird. And we would get messages on the machine, family machine, that would be like, hey, we got if you're this, go getting at such a young age, we'd love to meet with you. My parents would be like, what are you doing on the computer? You can't do that, And so that I did, I'd go in for some auditions, but I had a full regular small town childhood, and I was cheerleading and I was doing all sorts of stuff.
Where'd you grow up?
New Jersey.
Small town New Jersey?
Small town New Jersey, 45 minutes outside of the city, 35 minutes to the beach. And so we would go to New York a lot anyway. And we would go do those cattle calls, and I did community theater, and I went to school for musical theater. It kind of became, well, I'm right by New York. I love to sing and I love to act. I might as well pursue musical theater. But it wasn't ever really what I wanted. I would watch movies or TV when I was little and I would cry because I didn't understand why other kids were on it and I couldn't figure out how to do it. Lots of self-induced pressure as a little kid, for sure. And then right out of school, I went to an open call for the Fiddler on the Roof tour with Topol, who starred in the movie. And it was going to be his big final hurrah, big North American, tour. And I had been going to open calls like that since I could drive. So several years. And I would just sit there and I wouldn't get seen because Equity would get seen first. And I wasn't union. And this was a union project. And I did get seen. And I was the only person out of over 800 people they saw that booked it from the open call. And I got my union card right away. So I joined Equity. And I went on tour for 2 years. Including to where you are.
With Topol?
With Topol himself.
How long has he been doing that role? Has he ever done another role?
I think he's done some other things, but I believe the span was, so he was in his mid-70s. I think he was 74 when we did it. And he had started doing it in his 30s.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like thinking back to Fiddler on the Roof, the movie which he's in, I thought he was 70 then. I have this distorted thing. So he's 75 now, basically.
No, now I think he's got to be in his 80s because I think he was 74, 75. And, obviously he was in good health and, doing well, but he hurt his hip. And so about a year into the tour, he was like, I can't do this anymore. And I think he maybe had enough too. And I was playing his fourth daughter. So there was the 5 of us girls and the rest of the cast. And he was like, I'm out pretty much. And we all kind of were like, we have like another year long of this contract. We all need the work. Like, what's happening? And Harvey Fierstein came and stepped in and took over, which is so fun. And since he had some things already going on contractually, when he would leave, Theo Bickel, who was the original Captain Von Trapp in the Broadway version of Sound of Music, another storied, amazing career, would step in. So suddenly I'm 22. I'm like, a baby. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's my first union job. I'm getting to see the whole continent for free, being treated, like royalty everywhere we go. And now I've got Topol, Harvey, and Theo, which is like insane, So that's how I fell into it. And since there, it's just been going and growing. When I finished that tour, I fell into voiceover and commercials. I still wasn't totally doing what I wanted to be doing though. And that took some stepping back to kind of frame, what do I want? And then how do I do it? I understood I was really successful. I remember doing a play in New York in 2015, and I would just like sob outside the theater, literally 42nd and 9th, like living so many people's dreams. And I didn't even want to be there. So I had to take a step back. Not that I didn't enjoy that experience, obviously. And not that I don't enjoy commercials and voiceover. I love that stuff, but I really wanted to do TV and movies, and I really wanted to sing. And having the success I was having, even though it was great, it wasn't quite enough yet.
I'm a little confused here. How old were you, if you don't mind my asking,
right.
At this point where you realized I'm on the road with Topol, and then I'm on the road with Harvey Fierstein, and then but I'm not thrilled, like, because then all of a sudden you're back in New York, right? Like you were back
I was pretty thrilled on tour.
Yeah.
I was pretty thrilled. Yeah, I was having the time of my life on tour. And
which not everybody does. Like, that's not an easy thing to be on tour indefinitely. It's basically when you're not on stage, you're on the road. You're literally traveling to the next town.
Yeah, I think because it was Topol, it was planned for him. It was very cushy. We would have, 3, 4, 5 even weeks sit downs. Like in Toronto, we were there for 5 weeks, and it did so well. We actually came back unexpectedly for another few weeks.
Right. Toronto's definitely it's a fiddler town.
Oh, it's a fiddler town. Oh, yeah. And like LA, we were there for 5 weeks, so I was doing meetings while I was there, and I was flying out. Sometimes I would do auditions. I would, hop a flight to New York, do the audition, and fly back to wherever tour was.
Was this for auditions for other shows or commercials?
Yeah,
or
like
TV
if it was Broadway, or if it was a pilot or something, and I really wanted to be seen, I would do that. But yeah, no, I loved that. I still love it in my heart so much. I had the best time. And I think that's the right time to go on tour, right? When you're really young and I didn't have a family or super big responsibilities. I didn't even have an apartment, I had literally just gotten out of school. So, yeah, I love that. It only was a few years later that maybe, 25-ish, 26-ish from there, where I was like, I think I'm successful, and I want to make sure I'm successful at what I really want and what I love so much and what I've always seen for myself. So yeah, not to give the wrong impression for sure. I had the best time. I
mean, you talk about pressure. Like, is there a certain amount of urgency that you feel? I mean, acting, singing, being on stage, being on camera, these are generally speaking, air quotes, young person's game, right? Like, you've got to have the look, and you have to have the energy, and you have to have the freedom, and of course the talent and opportunity. Like, were you feeling like you had to make a change? Like there was an urgency because time was running out, opportunity was running out? Or were you just did you think you were just kind of treading water a little bit?
I think that externally, I have a very clear memory of, I'm really tiny, right? So that's why I was playing a 12-year-old. And, I've just started to play adults in the last couple of years. And especially in theater, right? You play young to a certain point. And I remember one of my friends, very well-meaning, who also does this or did this for a living, saying, well, you have until like 30. And so once you hit 30, that's it. And I remember like early on in those rehearsals, a group of the older women saying, you need to choose between, being in a relationship, having a family, and being an actress. These are things that all these people meant well, right? But they really messed with me. And so I held on to those things as though they were truths. I now know nobody knows. There's no actual path and there's no truth here. It's just whatever is going on for you. But I did feel like if I wanted to move to LA, or if I wanted to I would go in for a lot of Nickelodeon and younger things. And that felt like, hey, do it now, But again, I didn't know at that point really how to shift into it.
Why do you think some of the more established women that you spoke with, why do you think they felt compelled to warn you about this choice?
From their own lives, right? From whatever experiences they've had. And that's what everyone does, right? Your parents or whoever raises you and family members and just the elders in your life want to somehow protect you in a way they didn't feel protected, right? Or they're reflecting back something maybe they're disappointed about. But it doesn't mean it was going to be true for a 22-year-old brand new to the industry, who wasn't even thinking about getting married. So I think it's almost always out of good intentions, but we have to be really cautious about the things we hurtle onto other people.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that any career for anybody is going to, demand a certain amount of sacrifice and a certain amount of attention in order to be successful. But, there's something a little bit different about being in the entertainment business because your work time is everybody else's downtime. Mm-hmm. Does it change the way you view your work when you know that it is for people's entertainment, but it's entertaining them when you're working?
No, it's an interesting question. It's not something that I've actually ever thought about, at least in terms of stage, for sure. I do think that if you want to be a performer, especially theater, and you're doing 8 shows a week, you have to live in a way that other people just don't live. Your health has to be the number one priority. You have to be physically making sure you're working out, you're drinking your water, you're eating foods that really support you, but not too much food so you can go on stage, and your sleep schedule is radically different. If you get off stage at 11:30 at night and then you go to some after party, okay, you go to bed at 3 every night, so no one else really functions like that, except I guess infants, are up all night. But, and I think you have to be okay with that. And for a long time, I tried very hard to maintain my quote unquote regular life, making sure I got to everything for friends and, didn't miss a wedding. And if I did, I felt horrible and, had a very normal life. And I was trying to maintain the other side of it, which is my career. You actually can't, maybe some people can, but I could not be 2 people at once, which I think, again, is a youthful lesson. So yeah, I don't know if being the entertainment for others, that to me feels like the best gift in the world. So I don't think that ever felt like a struggle. It was the struggle to release. I'm not actually like these people that I'm friends with. I'm not actually like the people I grew up with, and that's okay.
Tell me what you're working on right now, because you said you were certainly on a good path, but you weren't exactly happy with where you were headed. You wanted to make a bit of a change, so you wound up in film and television. And is that where you're pushed to now?
Yes, 100%. So now I'm delighted to tell you, yes, film and TV and music, which is what I always wanted, is exactly what I'm doing. And that came at, many years of struggle and pain and all the things we all go through, right? But the other side of it is delicious. The other side of it is like, there's this part of me that I constantly feel within the set for my first movie. And I just felt like the whole time, little me, right? Like younger me freaking out, and just feeling like I wasn't wrong. I knew since I was like 7, 8 years old, I knew this is where I'm supposed to be. It just took a little longer to get here. But yes, that is what I'm doing now. Currently, right in the moment, I'm releasing a song. So I'm releasing my first ever my song versus songs I've sung on for other people. Which
this is one you wrote.
It's So I wrote it, and I worked with a great young producer who plays for a big country artist. So he actually has been on tour, and I'm in New Jersey, and we did this whole song remotely, and you would never know. Like it's just, I can't believe we figured this out, which is great. So he did the music, and it's a holiday tune because we're going to the holiday season. There's something about holiday work that felt the safest to create for my first song versus just letting one of my like personal songs out. There's something universal about wanting that uplifting feeling in the holidays. So that comes out next week, next Thursday, the 18th, which is June. It's called For Christmas. And I can't really believe that it exists. It's very exciting, and that, people are going to hear it. But for me, it really felt like not so much about the song and more about like remembering that I am and everyone really is deeply capable when we have a clear goal, break that goal into steps, and then run at it, and not talk ourselves out of it or, think of reasons why we can't and just do it. And like, look what I did, so there's something really satisfactory already about it, whether anyone ever listens to it or not.
You can spend your entire career as a performer singing other people's songs, saying other people's words. What is it about making stuff that really motivates you?
I love that question. Again, I think so much of where I am now comes from the last few years of doing a lot of deep, hard work that I think most people probably don't want to do or shy away from. And I ran at that the way I run at my goals. And that has undone and unlayered so much within me that on the other side, I've realized, I have something to say and people want to hear it. I think also I did a big movie called Knives Out a couple of years ago, and that has changed a lot of the trajectory for me in many ways. One of those ways being not only on set, but in events and at things following up so many men, and I'm all for it. Like, that's great. There's amazing people creating, but I would be at these like dinners, or I would be at, follow-up stuff or Q&As, and I would look around and I'd be like, like where are the women? Where are the women making films? Where are the women, writing songs? If you look at award nominations, a lot of times it's like, I was just looking at it for current animated song nominations, and it's 6 men and 1 woman, right? And that's okay. I think it tags back to what we were talking about earlier with the older women who were like, hey, be careful. And it is hard to balance, a partner or family or, a life with doing this. But that was a lot of why I started to think my voice is just as important and powerful. And I've always been writing songs and I've always been writing scripts. And now I think I'm in a place where I can actually put them out.
What do you think about the fact that women are asked to balance career and family, but you very rarely hear the discussion about men balancing career and family? Mm-hmm. Like, the supposition is that women have to do it. It's that their responsibility. How do you feel about that?
It makes me crazy. It makes me crazy. And I've watched a lot of women that I know and female friends step back from big goals or things they really wanted to do. I joke all the time, but I'm the only friend I know left that's acting. All my friends have quit. So not because they weren't talented, because it's just by itself, it's extremely challenging and comes with things that no other job comes with, just really psychotic, ridiculous things. But also a lot of it was, well, I really want to have a baby, or I'm going to get married and now I've got this household and I'm contributing, and it changes your focus. I agree. Most men are not asked to do that, or it's not even a consideration. And women are such badasses, right? So am I allowed to say that? Can I curse on this? Okay. And men are too. There's so many wonderful men. I don't like the narrative of like boo men. I think that that's just like a waste of time when it could be uplift everyone. But yeah, I think it's really tricky. And even though it's not something that I necessarily consciously believe, there are subconscious thoughts. There are things under the surface that are like, okay, well, you better figure out this other part of your life. And I always come back to the same thing, which is when you're doing what you love, you're a magnet, right? And every time I'm really authentically myself and living in my career, the right people come into my life, whether for work or personal. But yeah, that pressure is unreal. It's unreal, that pressure.
Who do you work with? I mean, do you have representation? You got an agent, a manager? I mean, do you have a team that's helping you, making this make sense?
No.
No,
I do. I do and I don't. I do and I don't. I had a wonderful team, like a lot of people in terms of commercial, voiceover, youth, and legit, right into 2016. And I got very sick with Lyme disease, which is such a gift. It got me to actually slow down and rest.
No one's ever said Lyme disease is a gift.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't really suggest it. Don't go looking for the tips, but if it happens, find the good. And that was kind of when I was stepping out of youth into adult anyway. So there would have been changes happening anyway. But by the time I was ready to get back in like 2018, No, I was doing it. I was doing it by myself. And I think I was able to notice early on that I book a ton of work myself anyway. So that wasn't like, oh God, what do I do? The thing that really throws people is I booked Knives Out with no team. So that's like, you know, people really respond crazy to that. And a lot of the podcasts I've done that are actor based, it's almost like they can't process what I'm saying. But I booked the Fiddler tour without, I mean, I had a manager at the time, but I went to the open call, right? And I've booked a ton of commercials and voiceovers from Actors Access, which is like an actor's breakdown site. And, you know, you go and you show up, and I've booked things just from word of mouth, or working with people once, working with them again. I think that the gatekeeping idea of agents and managers, when they're the right team, awesome. When they're the wrong team, it's terrible. It's not good. I am working right now I signed with a management about 6 months ago, and I have not seen anything coming from that. So to give you an example, I mean, it's a Friday. This week I had an audition for Nickelodeon, really fun voiceover. I had an audition for a movie I would love to do that actually has a fiddler person in it, like a big fiddler name. Of course, they follow you everywhere. And I'm doing this interview. I am like pitching and marketing myself constantly, and setting up all these other interviews. And I've got this really exciting week of giveaways leading up to releasing a song, doing that alone. So whether or not there's a name on my website, you know, that doesn't really matter. I do have a great team outside of it, right? And let me be clear. I want a team. Like, I want a great team. I want the agents. I want the managers. But I've never been afraid to pass on contracts. I've passed on several, and I've had a lot of wonderful former agents that I'm still in touch with say, I would bring you in for you to meet with the adult division. They could have never gotten you anything close to what you're getting yourself. And so I just have to like sit with that and trust the right people are coming.
What is it to navigate all of this stuff on your own? Yeah, you know, you write a song, or you get an idea of a song, and how do you know what the next step is? Doesn't an agent, don't they sort of help you, at least point you in the right direction, connect you with a couple of people, hopefully?
Right. Again, the right team. Yes. The right match for you and really gets you and you really get them. Yeah, totally. And I think any industry, right? So I've been doing a lot of calls with producers since the end of last year, when I was like, and now I'll produce. And I don't know why these crazy people are like, yeah, let's hop on a call. So I think it's also about just creating relationships in general, and that those are very helpful. My team though, you know, starts with me, and I have a wonderful therapist who gets to have some of that bouncing, right? And I have some really, really dear, wonderful friends who are also up for that. And some are in the industry and some are not. And most of all, I have me, you know, so I trust my intuition. I trust my gut. And I know I could talk it at length with my mom, or I know I could talk it at length with a best friend or someone in the industry. But at the end of the day, I have to choose. I have to know what's best. I have to trust that feeling, yes or no, or do this or don't. And then, like, you know, the steps wise, I'm just really obsessed with research. I love researching things. I love knowing. I'll ask questions. Again, I think with Knives, it opens so many doors that I get the opportunity and the privilege to ask the questions.
Well, tell me about Knives, because you said you booked that with no management, no agent. I mean, how did you even know about it? How did you get in the door? Who did you know? I mean, how did it come to pass that you were even being considered for something?
So when I was on that Fiddler tour, I went out to the movies one night. We had, you know, Monday nights off. We had just gotten to a new city. And I remember, like, I'd never gone to a movie alone before because that's how young I was. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to the movies. And it was for a movie written and directed by a guy that a group of my friends at home really loved. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like, maybe I'll there was a Q&A, and, you know, I went up and asked him to like sign something for a friend, and we just like became friends. We just stayed in touch. And that is Ryan Johnson, who has written and directed quite a few things, including Knives Out. But the industry was never part of it. Like, we never talked about, you know, we're actually like, it's an actual friendship, you know? So we were always talking about, you know, like whatever boy was making me cry, or, you know, some new movie to go see or whatever. And I was in and out for Star Wars with him. And it just ended up not being like the right fit. And we got to Knives, and he said, yet again, there's really no female role that is like perfect for you. And this is like prep. I want to work together at this point. I've watched you. I know you can do this. So he wrote me the role and he added it in.
And what was that role?
That's Sally. So Sally is a legal assistant to Frank Oz, the great Frank Oz, who was wonderful. And he played the attorney for the entire family. So our scenes were with the whole cast.
Yeah, I was going to say, who is in this? This is a ridiculous room that you were in. You're standing beside Frank Oz, and who else? Yeah. Take me around the room.
Chris Evans, Toni Collette, Jamie Lee Curtis, Daniel Craig, Ricky Lindholm, Noah Segan.
Just like a bunch of really ugly, talentless people.
Oh, the worst. Oh, Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon. Like Keith Stanfield. Oh my gosh. Just ridiculous. It's ridiculous levels of talent. And incredibly welcoming and very pumped to have me there. And we all had trailers, of course, but instead we just hung out in the basement of this giant mansion and played games and, had a blast. It was really wonderful. So that's quite the first movie. I had never even done like a student film. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's go.
Yeah, they're all student films. I've done, student films and indie films, and they're all very much like that cast in the room. It's just it's always Frank Oz, Daniel Craig, and Chris Evans walking to a bar. No, it's like some crappy joke.
Yeah, and I hesitate too, right? I hesitate because I can tell you if I was listening to this and I didn't really know the story, and I heard like, oh, some actress is like best friends with this big writer director, and like he like wrote her apart, No, that's like 10 years of him watching me work. It's a lot of callbacks that didn't go through. It's a lot of things of me being like bummed and frustrated, and a lengthy illness with Lyme. So it wasn't, I always want to clarify. It wasn't like he was like, hey, what up? What are you doing next week? Like, this is me working since I was 11, so I like to clarify in case anyone listening is thinking that.
When you make a big leap, you certainly don't want to feel like you're going backwards. So, I mean, how did you follow up Knives Out?
Right. With the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You just shut it all down. You just go, great. I had the biggest role in my life. And now I'm going to not work for 2 years.
Oh, man. Is that not true? Yeah, that was, I had a little pity party season for myself until I got some perspective. And I was like, you know what? I'm alive. I'm well. The people I love are alive and well. And if this is all I ever do, I have lived the biggest dream I've ever had. How lucky am I? Right. And that really became a huge shift for me at the end of last year into this year. But yeah, I mean, I was literally living my dream. I was living in LA and maybe at all these events and these things and premieres. And I cannot explain to you what it felt like. It was the most solidifying thing. Like I was not wrong. This is what I've always known I'm supposed to be doing, where I'm supposed to be. And then the pandemic hit. Then I had my pity party. And then I just was like, you know what? No. So I produced that movie. I did the voiceover for it. I started taking all these meetings and these calls and just like building my relationships. And I started interviewing music producers, and that idea started to take shape. I've done a lot of voiceover jobs. I just did a narrative podcast that comes out early next year. I'm really excited about. So that's the follow-up. And, luckily, I do know already I'm working on, with the same team, a TV show next year. So that's really exciting. And I feel like I'm going to keep working at this level. I mean, again, like God willing, but that's the feeling I have, is that that was like a taste, and now we're going to get the whole meal.
Talk to me about the balancing and the importance of self-promotion. I mean, how do you get the word out about yourself? Because if you're not in a project, it's hard to tell people to go look at you doing something. And oftentimes when you're actually making something, you have nothing to actually show right then and there.
Or you can't.
Yeah, legally. Or you can't. You literally are not allowed to show stuff, and you're not allowed to talk about it. So how do you go about promoting yourself so that people know you, respect you, see your work, understand who you are, and then certainly consider you when the time comes?
Yeah, I think podcasts for sure have been instrumental for promotion, and, working with like very select types of brands and doing Instagram lives and Q&A and stuff like that. I think it has to come from a place where you know that you, not only people want to know what you're up to, but that you deserve to share it. It took me a long time. I almost didn't share anything about Knives Out. Like I almost nothing, or pretty much anything I do. I've always been very quiet, or not putting on social media. Instead, I'd be like, here's this picture of me or my dog, But I think, you have to come from that place. Podcasts for sure. Pitching yourself, pitch yourself to a local magazine, pitch yourself to a newspaper nearby, be bold enough to take that action. That's pretty much how I mostly do it. And I often go back to like just having faith that eventually I'm going to have a PR team that's going to do it. And I won't have to. I think there's just so many ways right now. If you can think of it, you can do it. So whether some people are making TikToks, and essentially promoting themselves that way, or doing interviews, and I had to accept that people want to hear from me and are excited, and that I've moved into a new level, and then everything started to open up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have a really difficult time selling themselves, and follow very closely by. They have a very difficult time selling their stuff. So whether it's their music, their art, their film, or whatever, and they all think that it's really smart of me to do it, but the reality is you kind of have to learn how to do it.
Yeah, and
you have to have the guts to do it, or else you're not going to sell anything. You're ultimately not going to have that next opportunity.
You're your product, right? So yes, is it true that after Fiddler, I would just get like requests to come do a reading? Yeah. Totally. Is it true that since Knives Out, I've gotten like way more emails and way more scripts and things like that? Yeah, 100%. Like doors open, but you have to be the one like moving with it. And I think it's very true that talent has very little to do. We all need talent, right? We all need creativity, but it has very little to do with so much of this industry. And I fought that for a long time. It would make me angry. And now I believe that to be true. And there are so many people unbelievably talented in schools and churches all over, singing their hearts out and bringing joy to their loved ones, but don't want to do the industry and, didn't or couldn't understand it or didn't speak that language or didn't want to promote, and that's great. But there are way less talented people who are extremely successful just because they're confident enough to put themselves out there.
Well, tell me, what kind of advice might you have for somebody who does want to get into the industry? They want to start acting. They want to start singing.
I would say you can totally do it. It's not something, the way the internet and many coaching programs or many things you might find on a Google search are going to make it sound like this is some impossible trek. I think that you got to get your perspective in your mind right first, or as you're pursuing it. And then I think you just go for it, submit yourself to projects, do those local films, do things with your friends, just have fun and then see where it goes. Don't be so obsessed with the end point.
Speaking of the end point, where can people find out a little bit more about you?
Perfect segue. I love it. KerryFrancis.com, and Kerry is Kerry and Francis is Frances. Very hard names to spell. And Kerry Francis Official is my Instagram and my TikTok, which I am currently not actually using, but I have great plans to in the future. I'm on Instagram way too much. Instagram is the place to find me, connect with me. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing how you make a living.
Thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time.
Subscribe to Making a Living Show on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts. For more on the show, visit makingalivingshow.com and follow along on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Making a Living Show is produced by Next Exit Media and hosted by me, Robi Levy. Thanks for listening.